I guess I'd like to start out with this experience that I often have walking along. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, seeing, for example, an abandoned computer on the sidewalk that's being thrown out because it's become obsolete. And when I experience this, I always want to kind of go to it and give it a hug and really tell it that it was an extraordinary invention, a feat of engineering. Tell it that this way of dying is not dignified for this technology. I want to honor it. I want to honor its memory. Let's just call it a contemporary form of animism. I really have a lot of empathy for these abandoned technologies. The fact that they've expired makes them very human, because all of us in this room also have an expiration date. So this is one of the elements, this kind of sense of wanting to honor the memory of objects, of buildings, and why not also of cities, is something that is very much part of my work. So just to give you a little bit of an example of some of the work that's not related to public art. This is an exhibition that is made with 4 different kinds of media technologies that have become obsolete. It's called Quadratura. It's being a traveling show. The actual show has 6 different installations. I'm only going to show you 3 of them. DVDs are becoming obsolete. These were purchased in a flea market. All the movies are movie DVDs. All the movies were viewed, and clips were extracted from each one of these DVDs and then projected onto the surface, the reflected surface of the DVD. I thought DVDs were going to be here to stay, but as you know, with uploading, downloading, streaming, Netflix, etc., this is something that is kind of going down the path of history. I want to honor these media. I want to give them a dignified death, shall we say. I also want to reignite life back into them. And this is kind of a crucial component of a lot of the artwork that I make. So DVDs, I also have an installation which we're going to see shortly. It's made out of the TV screens from vacuum tube TVs. With the digital platform, all these technologies, all these devices became obsolete and were thrown out in the millions. And so there's a little bit of also of a sense of an environmental concern of trying to kind of question this accelerated obsolescence of these technologies, which I always feel can be given, again, another chance, can be honored, a remembrance of the life they had. What I'm projecting onto these TV monitors, this is the membrane that actually receives the televisual information, are test charts and white noise. 2 things that with 24/7 broadcasting have totally disappeared. This is something that a lot of people in the audience won't even remember, but some of us fell asleep and then would wake up in the middle of the night seeing things like this. And the 3rd installation, a 35 millimeter film. The origin of film. And as an artist that works a lot with moving images, again, I wanted to kind of honor the memory of these technologies that are kind of a bygone era. Most movie theaters now don't have 35 millimeter film. They have just video projectors as the one like we're using here. So I'm trying to kind of give life back to these technologies, to this film, make it look like if it's moving through the reels in and out of the projector, when in fact, it's not doing that at all. And the 4th installation is made with VHS magnetic tape. Anyway, I think you get a sense. Let's move on, because my time is running out. So in 2006, I guess I should start out saying I'm a visual artist. I'm based in Madrid in Spain. And in 2006, the city of Madrid approached me to see if I wanted to do something on this central monument. It's kind of our miniature Arc de Triomphe. It's called the Puerta de Alcalá, the Door of Alcalá. And one of the things that I kind of started doing, of course, is getting a sense of the history of this monument, which, by the way, is completely surrounded with traffic. Most Madrileans totally ignore it. We don't even know its history. We don't ever get close to it. So I found out that it was built in 1776, that it was actually a doorway into the old city of Madrid. You had to pay taxes if you were coming to sell your potatoes or your tomatoes, you were taxed at this point. It was really our what we now call immigration. This is what was used to control who could access the city and who was not allowed in the city. So I ended up doing a video projection of citizens of either a birth or adoption of the city of Madrid. I did a film recording, much like what I did here in Durham, and then I projected it onto the surface of the Puerta de Alcalá. While I was developing this project, this was again 2006, there were these striking images that started being piped through the media of sub-Saharans trying to jump the fence in Melilla. Melilla is this part of Spain that's like in a little tip top of the African continent. And basically, if sub-Saharans jump this fence, they become European, or they're not, they don't become European, but they're in Europe. So this is something that they're doing collectively. They're storming the border. And these are kind of images that were kind of horrifying and also electrifying in a way. I was very moved by these images. And this is pretty much the origin of Asalto. Asalto means storming in Spanish, so I've had iterations of storming. This is Asalto in New York and Greenpoint. In this case, this was an abandoned factory in a very kind of Polish and Russian neighborhood of Brooklyn. There's my setup. These extraordinary projectors that we have seen here in the festival in Lumiere allow me to create these massive projections of people climbing the facade of the building. A lot of the people who participated were from the area. A lot of them knew about this factory. They had, or their relatives had worked in this factory. It was just about to be torn down, making way for co-ops. It's become a very kind of like a place where a lot of people want to live now because it has great views in Midtown Manhattan. But in any case, the sense I wanted to kind of bring out the inner King Kong of all these participants, claiming this building, making it theirs. Crawling, of course, is a gesture that I'm very fascinated by. It's our crawling, all of us crawled at one point in our lives. As infants, that was our first act of triumph. It was our first adventure. It was our first exploration of space. And also the first time we started crawling away from the security of our mother. So I've made citizens of the world crawl in a castle in Spain, in an aqueduct in Rio de Janeiro, in a church in Rome. Obstacles, personal, professional, psychological, we all encounter them. We are all sub-Saharans trying to jump those fences and become citizens, to have a more dignified life. So this project, which I just thought was going to be a one-time deal in Madrid, in the monuments of Madrid, it just keeps on growing exponentially, and every place I do it just changes in mood and character. This is one I was asked to do in Times Square about a year and a half ago. I filmed for 4 days. I was in the middle of Times Square where anyone could participate. It was over 1,500 people ended up crawling along the green screen surface. There's an overhead camera that captures participants. All kinds of ages, body types, nationalities. It was really an extraordinary experience. It's very important for me that people are able to contribute their own material. And another component that's crucial for me is the sense of people watching and then acting. This kind of fluctuating role of actor and then spectator. I think too many times we remain spectators of our own cities. And it's very interesting for me to kind of bring back these traditions, these very much part of the theatrical traditions, of these roles that were not so kind of divided between actors and spectators, where again, you can become spectator and then you can become actor of the spectacle. So the recordings were then screened on 48 of the billboards of Times Square every night of September. They literally stormed Times Square. It was a very interesting shift of the kind of the advertising kind of rhythm that's usually prevalent, of course, on these billboards. These are commercial spaces. New York doesn't really have a public square. If anything, the closest it would have is probably Times Square, and it's so privatized, and this is one of the issues that I was really interested in kind of bringing to this work, is a claiming of the citizens taking over the space as kind of being taken over by the word of advertising and commerce. So storming of the Bastille, storming of the Winter Palace, and with a little bit of a sense of humor, the storming of Times Square. Of course, it's interesting, while I was doing the film recording, there was a massive image of Kate Moss walking down a cat run. And I would look to people that were going to participate and say, don't you also want to be on the screen? And that was one of the things that was interesting. Why do only supermodels get to be these marks, these traces? And again, we all want to leave a memory. We all want to leave a sense of belonging. The cities that so often are just spectacles, I think there's an urgent need for us to find ways, as happens, for example, here in Lumiere, where we can kind of reclaim cities, make them ours, make them feel we have agency in them. And finally, this is a kind of a different project. This is a park that was renovated in Madrid along the river. The river was basically lined by a 4-lane freeway. The freeway was placed underground, and I was asked to do a mosaic, to do an artwork on these two pedestrian bridges that were linking two neighborhoods that were completely separate. I wanted to bring back the tradition of the mosaic, a very kind of present technology, should we say, from the past. I invited neighborhoods from both communities, both neighborhoods I lifted them up with a crane and photographed them from underneath. And it was very important that these were neighbors from these two localities that were now going to be joined and that were, previously separated by a freeway. Of course, it's a permanent piece. The tiles were glass recycled tiles. That was an important component. I had a range of 250 colors to create this mosaic. There's two pedestrian bridges. It's the largest photo mosaic, I believe, that's been done, at least in Europe. And again, there's a sense of wanting to create a sense of remembrance, of honoring the citizens, of honoring people, the public that is kind of going to enjoy these artworks. And again, that's kind of my role as an artist. It's one of the things that I can do, that I can facilitate as an artist, is giving voice, giving space, giving the chance to leave a mark of those that participate in my projects, the public participation projects. I think we all have this desire and this need to honor our lives. Thank you very much.